Hello everyone, buongiorno, hola, ¿cómo estás? Just here to do a video on my own musings, on my own pontifications, on my own reflections on life, history, philosophy. Just enjoying this Sunday afternoon. Hopefully by today I'll be able to do some planting. Want to plant some garlic, hopefully some fava beans. Love gardening, love it. So just enjoying this Sunday afternoon, listening to some beautiful Italian music. I love Italian music. I think Italian music is probably the greatest in the world. The Italians had a huge influence on European music, huge influence on Spanish music, on German music. And I think before the Italians really developed their style, the rest of Europe was just musically inept. Just the music of Italy, especially after Catholicism became the religion of Italy, the religion of the Italian people. Music really advanced and thrived, and they're just such masters in harmony. I mean, if you look at the music of Antonio Vivaldi, Corelli, Locatelli, Boccherini, and even if you look at a lot of the modern music, look at the music of Pavarotti, Andrea Bocelli, Alfio Antico. If you look at the music of I can never pronounce his last name, Enzo Gragnello, I think his last name is. All brilliant musicians. I mean, very good music. You got other great artists, Pino De Vittorio, and many, many others. So I love Italian music. I love Italian art. Spanish culture is also beautiful, but a lot of Spanish culture really is influenced by Italian. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with adopting superior culture. Nothing wrong with that whatsoever. I think it's very important for the development of civilization. So the Italians really helped civilize the world. And it's interesting talking about Germany, and I've been doing a lot of videos lately on Germany. I was talking to a girl a few days ago who was of German descent, and she told me, and she said this herself, she said, the German people are really a barbarian people that have a degree of civility that keeps them under control. And I'm not saying that they're inferior or anything like that, but the German people have always been very warlike people. And some societies are more warlike than others. It's just a fact. If you go to Africa, you have tribes that are extremely warlike, and then you have other peoples who are more peaceful, more tranquil. The Spaniards witnessed the same thing when they went into Mexico. You had the Azteca, you had the Tlaxcalans, you had the Cholulans, very warlike native people. But then when they went into Michoacan, the Michoacan natives were very peaceful, tranquil, and were actually very, very open to Spanish Catholic culture. In fact, the Michoacanese Indians were the most tolerant and the ones that really absorbed the most of the Spanish culture and Spanish music and the Catholic faith. They were the most absorbent. They were the most open to accepting. And so they really, really loved Spanish culture. And when they saw the Spanish, when they saw how they acted, when they observed their religion, when they observed how their religion was reflected in their own actions, and then comparing it with the Aztecs, who were their enemies, they immediately noticed that there was indeed a difference in the disposition of the Catholics as opposed to the very violent, sanguinary, bloodthirsty disposition of the Azteca. And it's interesting to note that before the Spanish came into Mexico, the Michoacanese and the Azteca were always fighting each other. And the Aztecs did not control all of Mexico. Some people may have that misconception. They think, oh, the Aztecs ruled all of Mexico. That's not true. They ruled a significant portion of Mexico, but the region of Michoacan was never conquered by the Azteca. The Aztecs had tried. They had tried to invade Michoacan, but they always were vanquished and defeated. So while the Michoacan people were great warriors, they were not as tyrannical and evil as the Aztec. Still pagans, but nonetheless, because of their more calm, amiable disposition, they were more open, they had more of an inclination towards the Spanish worldview, which of course is the Catholic worldview. So, just one of my reflections for today. And another reflection that I have is on the Republican Party. And this is the one of the main subjects that I want to get into in this video. I've been hearing lately a lot of people saying that the Republican Party is dead. And when you ask them as to why they think this is the case, they will say, well, the Republicans have morally, politically, economically, fiscally, they have become no different than the Democrats. And I would say that this is true. I made the same observation when Obama and Romney were going against each other. People were saying that Romney was the better decision. I'm not really sure about that. I think that there are two different faces of the same essence, two different faces of the same coin, to use the old slogan. When Romney was the governor of Massachusetts, he had his own economic plan, and if you ever really read about it and inquire into it, it really was no different. From Obama's plan. In fact, part of Romney's economic plan is to, in Massachusetts that is, it was to offer women cheap abortions, $50 abortions. And really it was no different. I mean, Romney was pro-choice, Obama was pro-choice. Romney loved the homosexuals, the sodomites, the fags. Obama was in support of the homosexuals. Romney believed in socialism. Obama believes in socialism. So two different faces of the same coin, two different faces of the same essence. So, but this is the thing that I want to get to in regards to this point. This is the point that I want to elaborate on this issue. And that is that the Republican concept, the idea of being a Republican, has always been corrupt. Maybe in our recent times, the Republican Party adopted this sort of Christian identity politics, but that was more so to attract voters, as it was more so than it was a reflection of a innate Christian essence or innate Christian nature. What I'm trying to say is that it was a way to scam people, to convince people that they were the party of the Christians, and then it was really a way to scam the people, convince them to think that they were the party for the Christians, when in reality they were just doing a face. That's really what it was. Because when you study the history of Republicanism, in its roots, it's anti-Christian. In its roots, it's anti-Christian. It's antichrist. I'll give you guys some examples. In the French Revolution, the people who were guillotining Catholics and massacring priests called themselves Republican. They didn't call themselves liberal. They didn't call themselves leftist or socialist. They called themselves Republicans. And when you look at what was happening in Italy in the late 18th century, you can say the same thing. For example, in the year 1799, you had the pro-French Italians. Basically, these were Italians who wanted France to come into southern Italy and bring their evil philosophy with them. They wanted the same thing that was happening in France to take place in Italy. They wanted to destroy the church in Italy, kill the priests, make massacres. This is what they wanted. This happened in the year 1799. And once that took place in Italy, in southern Italy to be specific, you had a Catholic revolt. It didn't really work as well in Italy as it did in France, because the Italian Catholics were a hell of a lot tougher, obviously, because in Italy you had the Italian Catholic uprising. I believe it was called the Sanvestini. These were Catholic badasses. These were guys who took up guns and they fought against the people who were anti-clerical. They fought against the anti-clerical forces. this was basically the Cristero revolt of Italy. And the people who wanted to destroy the church in Italy, again, they didn't call themselves liberals, they didn't call themselves leftists, they didn't call themselves socialists, they called themselves Republicans. The same thing can be said about Spain. During the Spanish Civil War, in the early 20th century, you had the anti-Catholic forces, anti-clerical forces, and the Catholic forces. It was a bloody, bloody civil war. Hundreds of thousands of people died. It devastated the entire nation of Spain. It was horrific. And I remember when I went to Spain, I stayed in a town, a small town called Paracuelos de Jarama. Very interesting. The term Jarama is an Arabic word. It means sin. So the town, in a way, is titled the town of sin. Okay, Paracuelos de Jarama, of sin. The word sin is in the title of the town, which means that something probably really bad happened. So I remember doing a little research before I went to the town, on the town, on Paracuelos. And that town is famous in Spain for one reason, and one reason only. And that is that a horrific massacre took place in this town during the Spanish Civil War. A bunch of anti-clerics, people who hated the Catholic Church, took thousands of Catholics and butchered all of them. And the numbers vary as to how many people were killed. Some people say 3,000, some people say 1,000, and other sources say around 10,000 people were killed. Doesn't really matter which number you agree on. What we all can agree on, collectively, is that a lot of people were butchered in this town by anti-Catholics, people who hated the Catholics. I mean, they were lighting people on fire, using people as shooting practice. They were cutting people up. It was absolutely horrific. And what people don't know is that, people talk about ISIS. Most people don't think about the fact that, hey, just a little bit over 70 years ago, there was something worse than ISIS in Spain. And it was so bad. I remember when I was in Spain, I met a guy named Pedro. And Pedro's family suffered horrifically during the Spanish Civil War. A lot of Catholics in Spain will tell you will tell you all sorts of horror stories about what their families endured during this time period. And he told me that his relatives in the past, I think it was like his great uncle or something like that, many of them were butchered. The anti-clerical forces went into the village. They took all the people. They tied them up on posts, and then they used them for fire practice. Well, one of the people in the village, one of the men in the village who was tied up, pretended to be dead. So they assumed that he was perished. They assumed that he had perished, that he was gone. So they just put all the bodies in, and he was on the floor. And again, they thought he was dead. So when the coast was clear, when there was no one around, he got up and he ran away. And he went to a neighboring village. As he was in the neighboring village, he thought he was safe and sound. And a number of leftists, what they call in Spanish, izquierda, the leftists, they saw this guy, and they grabbed him, and they covered him in gasoline and lit him on fire. That actually was happening in Europe. It wasn't happening in the Middle East. This was happening in Europe. All right? The heart of civilization. And the people who were doing the killing were not, well, I should rephrase, they did not call themselves liberals. They called themselves Republicanos, Republicans. So the idea of being Republican has its roots in being anti-Christian. Even when you look at Abraham Lincoln, he was a Republican. And how did the Republican Party win votes in that time period? Well, what they would do is say, if you vote Republican, we'll give you a free lot of land. So all these people were voting Republican so they can get free land. I mean, we talk about how Obama was giving out free cell phones to people for voting for him, and that was bad. But look at what the Republican Party was doing in the past. They were giving out free land to people. That sounds like, I don't know, selling votes, socialism. So the Republican Party, when people say, oh, it's dead, I'm not sure about that. I think that what's happening is that that duration of time, that short period where the Republican Party, or when the Republican Party had this Christian face, it was really temporary. And now you're seeing that face dissipate, and the Republican Party it's as though it's going back to its roots. So I'm just giving you guys this little historical lesson to have you guys think, hopefully, on these things. Think upon the fact that the idea of republicanism is rooted in anti-Christianity, hatred for Christianity. So therefore, the next time someone says, well, the Republican Party is dead, you could say, I'm not really sure about that. I think maybe the Republicans are simply going back to their roots. I remember, I think it was 2 years ago or so, hearing Rush Limbaugh on the radio. And once in a while, I listen to Rush Limbaugh from time to time. And I remember he said in this video that he was becoming disillusioned with CPAC. CPAC is basically the organization for the elites. It's like, APAC is for the Jews. You have CARE. You have the Islamic PAC. I forgot the name of it. I think it's CARE or something like that. And then you have CPAC, and CPAC is for the conservatives. I forgot what CPAC means, but you guys all know what it is, and you can easily Google it. In fact, I can Google it right now. CPAC, oh, here it is. Conservative Political Action Conference. That's what it stands for. So Rush Limbaugh was talking about how he was becoming disillusioned with the Conservative Political Action Conference. Now, they invited him in the past. They were inviting him. But he was actually talking about, in this particular radio episode, how he was thinking about not attending the next CPAC conference. Why? Well, according to him, it was because he didn't like how the Republicans were starting to bring in homosexuals, inviting them to be guest speakers. And Rush Limbaugh, of course, was right. I mean, it's wrong to be bringing these people over. And you have people arguing, and you had people arguing then, that it was contrary to the Republican idea to bring in homosexuals, because by that you would be then promoting homosexuality, and that's an absolutely accurate observation. It's accurate in the sense that it would be advocating for perversity. What is not accurate is that it would be going contrary to Republicanism, because Republicanism, within its innate roots, based on what we read from history, is anti-Christian. So for them to be bringing homosexuals in, it's like, well, it's anti-Christian. Just because someone says that they are Republican, that does not necessitate a Christian identity. It does not guarantee that the person has a Christian identity. It's just really, really funny how it all works, and it's actually quite depressing. People wonder, well, why don't we have a Christian party, right? I've heard people say, and I'm sure there are a lot of people out there who think this way, we should just have a true conservative party, and it would be nominally Christian, in that it would not be a party of a specific denomination or a specific church. It would be conservative, and then we would have all these different people who would identify as Christian, or they would be people who subscribe to Christian morals. And here's the problem with this. For one thing, it would never work. Yes, you would be able to configure such a party. That is indeed possible. We saw it with the Tea Party. But it would not be successful in the long run. It would not gain or ascertain any sort of major political victories in the voting booth. We saw this with the Tea Party. Years ago, the Tea Party formed. It was back in, I think, 2009 or 2010. You saw the formation of the Tea Party. I remember because I went to one of the rallies. And when I went to the rally, it was my first ever Tea Party. And before I attended this rally, I heard all sorts of good things about the Tea Party, that it was going to take over the country, that it was going to dominate, it's going to be the alternative party. opposed to the Democratic Party or the Republican rhinos. It was going to shake the establishment, yada, 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 yada. And I went to this I went to this rally with some high expectation. I was expecting maybe to see something pure, something that was righteous, right? Well, little did I know and how naive I was to assume such a thing. I went to the rally, and as I was walking toward the crowd, of course, I hear the voice of Ted Nugent, and he's up there. I'm gonna sing you all the American national anthem. And he's pulling the electric guitar, and he's like, he's going off on the American national anthem with his electric guitar. Of course, it sounded like garbage, but the people loved it. That really wasn't my main problem, though, with the rally. Before Ted Nugent got up there, Glenn Beck was speaking. And I remember I didn't see Glenn Beck because we just parked, so I was walking toward the rally, and all I could see was like trees and people walking around. So I was not yet in the crowd. I was on the outside of the crowd, on the outskirts of the crowd. But I could hear him talking, and he's going on about liberty and the Constitution and yada, yada, yada. So I got into the rally, and then there's Ted Nugent playing the guitar, and he's rocking that national anthem out. What bothered me wasn't really the speakers. I mean, Glenn Beck's a wacko. We all know that. Ted Nugent has some good things to say, and he's probably a really, really cool guy, but I'm not too crazy about playing the national anthem with electric guitar. What I didn't like, and what left a bitter taste in my mouth after leaving this rally, was the people. The people. Because at the end of the day, it's not so much the speakers as it is the people. Because the people are the strength of the party. Without the people, you have no speakers. I mean, the reason why the speakers are there is because there is a demand from the people to hear them. Supply and demand, right? The law of economics applies to the speaking circles as well. So there were some good people there, I'm sure, but I saw a lot of lesbians there, homosexuals there. Didn't like what I was seeing. And I remember my father was right next to me, and I told him, I said, have you noticed there's a lot of these fags walking around? He says, yeah, I noticed it. And I said, I thought this was supposed to be some kind of conservative party. And my dad's like, yeah, I guess they're here because they just want lower taxes. That was an accurate observation. So why is the idea of a Christian party or a conservative party with a nominal Christian face impossible? Why is it impossible? Why is it a goal that is insurmountable? Because American society is an amoral society. American society is an amoral society. Am I singling out America? No, because a lot of other societies are amoral. I get it. So please don't give me this garbage about how I hate Americans. All right, I'm an American myself. I'm an American simply observing my own nation. All right, I'm not Middle Eastern. I mean, racially, I'm a Semite. Okay, but I also have a lot of family who comes from Wales and Norway. So I'm a mixed bunch. I'm a dog with a lot of different other dogs mixed in. What do they call it? A mutt. A true patriot is one that is critical of his own country. Someone who is not critical of his own country is simply one who subscribes to a ridiculous obeisance. It's a person like that is someone who has a worldview that is absent of any discernment. So, not so much as patriotism, it's more so, that I would say is more so fanaticism, and I don't want to enter into that realm because that's when you enter the realm of crazy, and politicians can control you, and it just never ends well. So, why do I say America is an amoral society? Am I saying that everyone in American society is amoral? No, but I'm talking as a whole. I'm not talking about individuals who are good people. I'm not talking about people who live within the country who are charitable and good people, who believe in Christianity and good morals. I'm not talking about that at all. I'm talking about generality here. Generality. Generally speaking, it is an amoral society. I'll give you guys some examples. One thing good about the Donald Trump campaign, one thing good about this whole election is that it is revealing how amoral America is. I'll give you one example. This, in my opinion, is one of the most revealing examples that I can think of. Look at Donald Trump and what he has said. When he brought up the wall, we're going to build a wall and Mexico's going to pay for it, and all these illegals are coming in and they're ruining the society and they're bringing crime and this and that. He has never backed down from that statement. Never has he ever backed down on that statement. And this is why a lot of people come up and say, well, he's like a lion. And they come up with these kind of sensationalist terms that I don't think even Trump would agree with. I don't think Trump would want to be praised in such a way. But they say he's like a lion, he's like a train, he's going to crash and slaughter everybody, and he's this mighty man, and it's like they're making him almost like he's God. It's this type of crazy opprobrium that is what's an innate part of populism. But anyway, he's never backed down. He comes in and he starts talking about China. The Chinese are screwing us over. We're going to get back at them, and all that. Never backed down, even though there probably were some Chinese people in America who were pissed off about it. Never backed down from that. He said, oh, that judge over there, he's just doing it because he's part of La Raza. And he's right. I'm not objecting. Never backed down. But the only time that I saw Donald Trump back down is when he made a statement of principle. That is the only time I ever saw that guy back down. When he went on the Chris Matthews show. And Chris Matthews, with his little presumptuous way of talking, said, how would you outlaw abortion? How would you enforce an abolishment on abortion? And Trump said, there needs to be some sort of punishment. He never said put the woman to death. He never said put the brat before a firing squad, nothing like that. He just said there needs to be some form of punishment. A fine, maybe some prison time, whatever he meant. He said there needs to be some degree of punishment, which is probably, to be honest, the greatest answer that I have ever seen from a candidate on the subject of the abolishment of abortion. I mean, I have never, all these years being a part of the pro-life movement, advocating for pro-life, fighting against abortion, all the years, I have never seen a better answer from a politician than that of Donald Trump at that moment. And I was like, I had joy hearing this. Finally, we have a politician, someone running for office, who gives a great answer, the best answer I ever heard. Of course, it's not the ideal answer. The ideal answer would be, well, she should be treated as a murderer and put to death. But that was a step in the right direction, as opposed to what we've heard for years. Oh, there needs to be some sort of restriction, bullcrap. It hurts the women too, and all this nonsense talk. And the vicious response from people was unreal. The people who responded to Donald Trump first were not the liberals. It was the mainstream pro-life establishment that made the first violent reaction. They expressed the first statements, the first objections. They had this violent reaction, this vicious reaction. And because of that violent reaction, Donald Trump backed down. Which kind of contradicted this whole persona that they're trying to project to us about him. He's a lion, and he's this and he's that. But besides the point. The point is that the fact that you had the pro-life, forget the liberals. Okay, the liberals were mad, but their response came later. And that response is expected. The fact that the constituency, the the conservative following, the conservative constituency, did not back him up. But it's not like they didn't just back him up. They went against them. They fought him. Tells me something about American society. The fact that all these millions of young people who supposedly are against abortion, the fact that they didn't support him, all these mainstream pro-life leaders didn't support him, the fact alone tells me something about American society, that it is an amoral society. They are pro-life for different motives. And even when they say that they are pro-life, they will say things like, well, the woman is hurt too, even though she's a murderer and she has blood on her hands. For example, I was having a conversation today with somebody, and this person said, well, we have all these abortions. She was pro-life. And, we have all these abortions, and it's horrific, and millions of abortions, and millions of babies dead. And I said to her, why do we have so many abortions? Oh, because of, people will say, this politician or the government failed. Why do we have so many abortions? It's because women want them. You have women who want to murder their own children. They are people without principle. Oh, but it's because of their boyfriends. And that leads me to my second question. Why are they going with these types of men? Why are they fornicating with these men? These questions lead us to a conclusion that it is indeed a very decayed society. We focus so much on attacking the abortion doctors, but we never, rarely, if we ever do, focus on getting these women to not murder their children. Because we treat them as the victim, as opposed to being the murderer. There's a supply and a demand. Many, many women want abortions. So doctors come in and fulfill the want. They fulfill the demand. If the females in the society did not want abortions and they were staunchly against abortion, they were adamant against abortion, all the doctors would go out of business. Of course, we would still have laws because you're always going to have a bad apple here and there, but for the most part, they would go out of business. But no one is addressing the evil of these women. No one is saying that those women are evildoers. No one is saying that these women are murderers, that they have innocent blood on their hands, that it is because of them and their desire and their own evil actions that we even have abortion doctors, that we even have these globalist elites supporting it, that we even have all of these politicians coming out and signing legislation in favor for abortion. That is the source. It comes from the people up. We like to think that evil comes from up in the political realm to the people. No! It comes from the people up. It comes from the roots, like a plant. No one in their right mind would ever say, oh, the plant is formed from the leaves down. No, it starts from the root. You throw a seed in the ground, and what's the first thing that comes out of the seed? The root. Once the root latches onto the earth and begins to take nutrients from the soil, then it begins to make a stem. And you have leaves, and eventually, once the plant gets big enough, you have flowers, and then eventually you have fruit. And if the root system is good, if it's getting good nutrition, if it's strong, if it's not malnourished, then you have a healthy plant. You have a happy plant. It's the same thing with the society. Where does it come down to? It comes down to the people. Well, you say it's bad fathers, bad mothers. That's true. That is the root. It's crappy parenting. Crappy parenting. Why do we have crappy parents? We have to keep asking these questions until we finally get to the cure, and the cure is Catholicism. The cure is Catholicism. You may think that I'm crazy for saying that. I would like to debate anyone who disagrees with me. But when I read Christian history and I read the old books, 1st century, 2nd century, 3rd century, 4th century, it's all Catholic. You have the bishops, you have the intercession of saints, you have the holy water, you have the councils, you have a distinct position given to Rome. You have all of these things. So I would encourage anyone, if they want to know the truth of their own religion, to read the Church Fathers. That's what I did, and I wasn't even planning on becoming Catholic. Back in 2010, I began to read the Church Fathers intensely, and years later concluded it's the Catholic faith. But going back to what I was saying, people like to say, well, it's these abortion doctors, it's the women who want evil. And they go with these evil men. They don't want the good guy, they want the evil guy. And then they'll sit there and say, oh, my boyfriend made me. Really? Are the women that morally inept that they have to murder somebody because their boyfriend said it? It's amazing, these women, they'll dump their boyfriends, they'll dump their husbands for the most superficial reasons. But a boyfriend who says commit murder, that's okay with them. It's just another sign as to how decayed people are. So with Donald Trump, let's go back to Donald Trump and how his election is really revealing how amoral of a society America is. He goes against the Mexicans and wants to build the wall and all that, and people have no problem with it. Why? Oh, because the Mexicans are taking our jobs. The illegal aliens, the illegal immigrants are taking our jobs. They're taking our money. So again, it goes back to materialism. The Chinese are screwing us over because they're taking our money. Again, it goes back to materialism. It goes back to monetary gain. It goes back to reducing the whole political spectrum to a pecuniary concept, a pecuniary factor. Money is the central focus here. The fixation is money. It's not about principle. And once Donald Trump finally made a statement on principle, he got into trouble. He did not receive trouble just from the leftists, the liberals. He received a tremendous amount of trouble from the Republicans. In fact, he received more hatred from the Republicans and the pro-lifers who are really just pro-death, than anyone else. Why? Because they had no principle. They have no principle. And I'll give you guys another example. I mean, I've heard this crap so many times. You even hear this from some conservatives. When the subject of gay marriage comes into the conversation, they will say something like, well, why do gays want to get married anyway? Marriage is BS. And they say things like that because they know they don't want to support gay marriage because they know it's wrong, but at the same time, they don't want to act like they're dogmatic. So they say, oh, I don't know why they want to get married anyway. Right? Again, no principle. But it seems that in America, the only way you can get ahead is if you are a person who has the least amount of principle, or you are the most neutral. You are the most vacuous of principle. Look at how politicians work. Look how populist leaders work. How do they work? They are the least principled. That they are the least principled. Bottom line. Because they come up and they say, let's accept the gays, let's accept everyone else, the atheists, the fags, let's accept it all. And that's another great example is the fame of Milo Yiannopoulos. You have all these Christian people. Oh, Theodore, I agree with what she's saying and everything, but I really wish she would stop. I really wish she would just stop attacking Milo. Why? He's evil. He's homosexual. Oh, because he is touting the party line that you like him. What does that mean? Absent of principle. They have no principle. They have no morals. It's a principle-less society. Ask yourself this question. How come abortion hasn't been illegal yet? Supposedly, we're living in the most pro-life era since Roe v. Wade. We're living amongst the most anti-abortion generation since Roe v. Wade. Well, ask yourself, how come abortion is not illegal? And anytime a state tries to make it outlaw, or at least they'll do something like, well, we'll outlaw it in a certain period of pregnancy. Anytime they try to do that, it's like you have the federal government just hammering them. Look what happened in Texas. The government of Texas said, okay, we're going to defund Planned Parenthood. Planned Parenthood went out of business, and then supposedly some superior judge came and struck it down. Now Planned Parenthood is back in Texas. The hell does that tell you about? Or look what happened in North Carolina. The governor of North Carolina says, I don't want this faggot crap in my state. NBA comes in. We're not going to have the All-Star game in North Carolina. The basketball, university basketball comes in. We're not going to have the, whatever they call it, the final event in your state. What's that about? No principle. People would rather worship sports than they would actually follow principle. Now, if the governor of North Carolina wins and he's reelected, then I would say, well, those voters are people of principle. But if he doesn't, then it would tell me something about that state. So, again, I'm not talking about, if you are an individual listening to this video and you're a person of principle, don't get mad. I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about the whole of society in general. Because the good people in America really don't have a say-so. Because they're such a minority. The bad ones have the say-so. Try to outlaw abortion, it's not going to happen. Why? Because a lot of people in America want to murder their own babies. A lot of women in America want to murder their own babies. And the pro-life movement doesn't want to talk about that. They just want to talk about, oh, look how bad abortion is, as opposed to going to the source of the problem. That's what happens when you lack principle. So that ends it for today's video. I just want to end with a song because earlier in the video I was talking about the Sanvedisti. Can't pronounce that correctly, but the Italian Catholic uprising against the anti-clerical forces in the late 18th century. And I want to end with a song that was actually made by these Italian Catholic fighters. It's their song, and it's the song that they sung when they were in battle against these anti-clerics. So I'm going to play this song for you, and that's it. I hope you guys have enjoyed this message. Hope you guys have, more importantly, learned something from this message. This is Theodore Shoebat. God bless, and God be with us.
De gran ganche, viva l'uva, volva, allo suono tamburiel, sorriso di poverier, allo suono campana, viva li vola, allo suono violino, martelli giacobi, suona, carmagnola, suona i consigli, vi vorrei con la famiglia, suona, carmagnola, suona i consigli, vi vorrei con la famiglia. A Santerma tanto forte l'hanno fatto con marito, casco cornuta, spravognata, l'hanno chiusa mi trianga, ma in staghi da trarude, visto come capiavo, te signore cavaliere, te volevano prigioniere, suona carmagnola, suona i consigli, vi vorrei con la famiglia, suona carmagnola, suona i consigli, vi vorrei con la famiglia. Alla fine c'era in giugno Sant'Antonio glorioso, signore sti birbando e facendo mazzatal, sono venuti i francesi, audita San Giannano, libertà e carità, con roba a me e roba a te, e suona carmagnola, suona i consigli, vi vorrei con la famiglia, e suona carmagnola, suona i consigli, vi vorrei con la famiglia. Li francesi sono arrivati, c'hanno buono un garzone. E voilà, dal Ciambula la libertà. Ha svegliuto una Leonora che balla con Podriano. Mo a palmi sul mercato, insieme con Masto Donato. E zona Carmagnola, sono i consigli di vorrei con la famiglia. E zona Carmagnola, sono i consigli di vorrei con la famiglia. All'umore senza guerra, so dirai l'albero terra, afferrai nei Giacobini e poi seccare la mattina. Zona Carmagnola,